Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. We are going to talk about this pilot project that we have done together with 5 institutions about the integration between Pure and Data Monitor. And so after this brief introduction, we'll hear directly from 2 of our 5 pilot customers what their experience has been. And then we'll end up talking about the roadmap. So what we have learned from this project and what we're going to do to accommodate for the needs that have been raised by our partners. So first of all, for those of you who do not know what Data Monitor is an attempt to address a common problem that we hear from institutions that are struggling to track where the researchers are publishing their datasets. We've heard from Jan before that datasets are becoming more and more important as a research output be tracked in systems such as CRIS systems and Pure, for example. But a lot of these data sets are published outside the institution, so they're hard to track. What we have done is we have put together a corpus of data sets, collecting data sets from over 2,000 repositories, including the entire data site. We have curated that corpus and we have enriched that corpus with author and affiliation identifiers so that it's easy to attribute the data sets to the right authors and institutions, and this information can be served via an API and fed into systems such as Pure, where Pure administrators can import and curate that information even further. So we started this looking into this problem 3 years ago, and our work in the past 2 instances of the Pure conference. So last year, we launched the data monitor integration as you see it today in Pure. And at the end of the session, we looked for institutions that were interested in joining a pilot project to test this new integration with us. So we've involved the University of Groningen, University of Southern Denmark, University of Namur, and the Free University of Brussels and the Free University of Amsterdam in this effort, which I really thank our partners for joining this project. And we'll hear now directly from 2 of these partners what their experience has been. So I'd like to have Bernard de Tremblay from the University of Namur to take the stage and talk about this.
Thank you, Alberto. So yes, we have jumped in the process of trying to integrate our dataset into Pure, but it's of course a project that has been launched some years ago when we first installed Pure in 2012. And this project was driven by research administration because we were missing an institutional repository. And for such a small university as like we have, it's important to use some products to do that. So in the first step, we first added research outputs, activities and projects into Pure. Then 2 years later, we moved towards the award management module because research administration was using it for managing all the funding opportunities and contracting we might have with funder. And finally, in 2018, we saw the need for research visibility. That's why we launched the research portal from Elsevier at this moment. It was not Attira anymore. And at the same moment, we see more and more requests from funders or from researchers to show datasets on the portal. But it was really a tough issue because globally it's well known that 90% of the datasets of research data are hosted outside the institutions and 10% should be hosted inside. In fact, in Namur, it was even worse. We had only 3 or 4 datasets hosted internally, and all the rest was widespread over lots of different repositories. But on the same point, we absolutely wanted to show the datasets on the portal. So we have launched discussions with Elsevier at the moment on how to import somehow the dataset into Pure. And we have been working actively with Alberto's team in order to manually find all datasets that could be found on the cloud for the University of Namur. The way we did it was to transfer DOIs of lots of publications to to Mendeley, and they found datasets thanks to the DOI in different repository. And finally, we bulk import the datasets into Pure in order to manually test the full process that is now completely automated through the data monitor. So starting from 4 datasets, we have been able to import this way 400 datasets. So it was already a nice improvement, but there was still a lot of work to do. Certainly, there was a lot of issues on name matching. You know that in the research environment, naming is always an issue because there is so many ways to present himself that it's difficult to find the right naming, but also organization was also an issue. And certainly also the fact that there is plenty of different repositories. So finally, we moved towards a new system and we test the new data monitor. And in June, we have achieved the number of 683. And now we are way over there. We are around 800 datasets into the system, collected automatically through the new data monitor search engine that we have connected to Pure. And that's just amazing how it works. For us, the objective was to be able to have something as easy to use as Scopus is for importing research outputs, and that's now the case. So we have asked ourselves why this project was a success, and one of the main reasons is certainly the early engagement we had with the consulting and engineering team of Elsevier, because we have been able to work together, understand the need for researchers, understand the research administration point of view, and merge all that together in order to achieve a final product. The creation of a manual process was also a very good way of being sure that we will meet the requirements. And finally, our final goal was to reduce administrative tasks for all the researchers through this kind of product, and it's certainly achieved today. So now I will give the word to Christina Montagnier from University of Groningen, who has also been involved in the test phase.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm here to present the experience of the University of Groningen in the pilot for data monitor integration. So first, why we decided to answer to the call that Alberto gave last year in the same conference. Mainly because we recognize the increasing relevance of dataset, as was mentioned by Bernard. For research, having more and more dataset registered in Pure means increased visibility and recognition of their work, and also we hope to increase the chance for them to create a new collaboration. For our university, we have an internal research data policy, but also as Dutch university, we have to comply with the coming with the new strategic evaluation protocol, the SEP, that will be from the next year on, and where open science and fair data are key elements for the evaluation of our institute. And with Pure and with the registration data set in Pure, we want to support the fair defendability of data set of data. We have, as a library, a dedicated support team in the research data office that help researchers along all the life cycle of the data. So before starting the collection of the data, actually with the research data management plan, until the publication in a repository. But as Bernard introduced before, we are not always aware of all the data, where all the data sets are stored. And of course, if you have experience using Pure and searching for data set, you know that doing this job manually is a lot of work. So for all this reason, we create a plan for the next year to increase the number of data set in registering Pure, and we are using the API from Data Monitor as a piece of this puzzle. So first we map all the possible source of data. So the research environment mean more personal research environment, computer or laboratory computer. the university work environment that our ICT department is creating to collect and work and share data between researchers in our university, and eventually the final version of this the data set will be stored in public repository, and it's there where the data monitor help us to search and to import automatically in Pure. At the same time, we are also stimulate the sharing of data from the research environment to institute and faculty archives, and then possibly register also them in Pure. Or some of them will be part of the university work environment, so giving possibility to other researchers to get access to the data even if they belong to different institute or faculty. So this is our roadmap for the coming years, but it's just to show you where this piece of information can also be useful to create a more large vision on data in your institute. Now, going more in detail about our experience using the API, we tested in the pilot project 2 API, a free one and a pay one, and my conclusion are about the pay version. And considering the corpus of a repository, we are very satisfied with that. Of course, we can improve. There are always space for improvement, but the discovery functionality is quite very good. We ask Data Monitor to work a bit more on the metadata from Dataverse, and I think Alberto will talk about that later. Concerning our feedback more strictly on Pure, we discussed in the pilot a lot about synchronization. So the synchronization is a important feature in this product, but we tested some difficulty and some limitation in the quality of data, not related to Pure, but sometimes low quality of data from the source. So we decide to, we suggest to Elsevier to have the possibility to enable this functionality, and this will be also possible in the coming release. Another thing that we would like to pay attention is about the duplication and the match between dataset, and we think the method used for research outputs is much more elaborate and should be also adapted for dataset. Finally, we support and we are working together with the team to comply with OpenAIRE guidance. Our experience as participant in the pilot was was very positive. It was a very good opportunity to know more how Pure and Mendeley data work and are organized. And I think it is in general a good opportunity for university to present their own wishes and requests, and to explain also how this work is done on the daily basis. That will help also to improve and create a new collaboration between support staff from different universities. We identify that sometimes the need of the effort, the time, and also the knowledge needed to participate to such pilot sometimes is a bit specific. So we involve our research data support team on that, and that is maybe not always present on maintenance team. So we recognize that is necessary some different knowledge to support this pilot, but we are definitely open to follow the same kind of collaboration for other topics. So I will leave the floor to Alberto to present the other feedback.
Yep, thank you, Christina. So of course, we've collected feedback from the other partners as well, and the general feedback was that the system is ready for prime time, but there are improvement areas. You've heard some of them. In a nutshell, about Data Monitor, it's all about the quality, so more content and better content and more enriched content. On the Pure side is more flexibility when importing the dataset metadata and the ability to provide self-import capabilities for researcher. And for both, as you've heard before, open air compliance, really, really important. So we took this feedback with us, and this is the roadmap for Pure and for Data Monitor. So for Pure, already in 5.15, as Christina said before, it's possible to toggle between synchronization and manual import, where if you choose manual import, you will have the ability to edit all the metadata. They're working on compliance with OpenAir, and in 5.20, self-import for research will be available as well. For Data Monitor, it's really about the content. So we're working on OpenAir compliance, but we're improving the quality of the enrichments through 2 data science projects that we aim at having for every affiliation string that we find in each data set, an affiliation identifier, better leverage the connection between articles and data sets to even further improve the enrichments by using the availability of the Scholix corpus from OpenAir. Increase the coverage of repositories such as data. Thanks again to everybody, and I think we can take some questions from here.
Thank you. That's very interesting. A bit beyond my skill set, but we did have one question about GitHub and whether that has been looked at, specifically maybe for Bernard.
GitHub, we have requested Elsevier to look at GitHub. It's not yet included as a source, but it's somewhere in the mind of Alberto that it should be somewhere in the roadmap. But I guess that Alberto can comment on that.
We've had extensive discussions about software as an output that should be tracked in research systems or anywhere for that matter. And indeed, it's closer to data sets than an article. And a lot of software is published as a data set. There are repositories such as Zenodo, for example, that offer this capability of publishing software and minting a DOI so that you have a persistent identifier for software, because that's one of the big issues, having persistent identifiers for research outputs, of course. So we are looking into that. We can enable connections with software repositories, and we will definitely look into software repositories as yet another repository that we index in our content.
Excellent. Is there anything that cannot be pulled in from a data set standpoint? I mean, I guess things like, private health information, obviously, because you wouldn't be able to protect it. But is there anything else that, like sort of the sky the limit?
I think there is, in principle, no limitation. Of course, you cannot bring in physical data like samples and stuff like that, but that's obvious. We're dealing mostly with metadata anyway. So even the case of sensitive information is usually kind of dealt with by the repositories themselves. So you might have the metadata available and the data only available upon request and under specific authorization workflows. So that goes beyond the scope of what we are doing, because what we are trying to do is to make sure that these data are available, and whether they're fully open or they are protected, that's really depending on the nature of the data itself, the licensing, and many other things.
And I think the visibility thing, because that's a reputation of the researcher standpoint, right? And what their either contribution is or implementation of using a particular data set. So I think that's a big thing. So it was kind of, the slides are a little bit hard to see in terms of how that's represented on an individual profile. Where does it sort of come? Is it in terms of how you're thinking about it, how it would in a pure visual?
Oh, today it's appearing like another research object in the profile of the researcher, linked with research outputs, activities, projects, and so on. So it's just another object, research object. But now more and more in open data initiative we see from different funders, it's more and more presented on the first line of the visibility of the researchers. And so when in the past people were only looking for publications or research outputs, now more and more they are looking towards data and data sets. And so it's present it more or less on the same level. Certainly on the portal, datasets is one of the objects that is linked with the profile of the researchers, of the organization, of the projects, and so on.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I want to thank all four of you very much. Again, this is very, very, very nice, very informative. I think we should move on to our break, which is very important now. You've all been very attentive. Think about your questions. If you felt like your questions didn't get answered, please take them to the forum, or we'll try to rework them back to speakers in the back end, but we really appreciate your attention.